Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. Today I finally did my fabulous coat. I absolutely am in love with it. I still need to do a final iron on a cool setting, but I think it's come out absolutely fabulous. So as you can see, it's got a nice big hood. It comes with an option to just do like a normal collar, and it just does up with a belt. So I did make in the video the belt that goes with it, but I don't like it as much. Then the fabric I've used is a jacquard, and then I used just a polyester lining. So if you would like to see how to make this fabulous coat, please stay tuned. Alrighty, so let's get started. I have the instructions here. I have already cut it all out just to save some time. And I did it at night. So anyway, so we're finished with the first page. So we're switching over to here. And we are going to start with the upper front section. Now I've got everything wrapped in its pattern piece to hopefully make this a little bit easier for me. That's the hood. That'll be second, so we'll leave that out. Okay. So I have marked on my pattern piece the dart that we need to do. So I'm going to flip it over to the back. And we are going to want a chalk pencil to mark the darts on here. So I'm just going to line this up. And with the bottom ones, you can actually just do a little clip. It'll do the same thing. But you obviously don't want to clip the dart up the top. So we just need to pull it back like this and mark the dart on the back of the fabric. So let me just get that. I've got my Chaco pen. So the way I mark the dart is I actually do a crisscross because a single line's not super helpful. So I'm going to mark that. And then we just grab a ruler or anything with a straight edge. And so we're going to mark from the clip like this. Now, the downside to lining fabrics is they're super soft and super annoying to work with. They slip all over the place, which is not super fun. So I'm going to go there to there. I'm going to put a lot of pressure on it, so hopefully it can't move. Alright, so that is one dart. So you don't even have to necessarily mark those lines, but if you're new to sewing, what you want to do is you want to put right sides together so that those bottom marks line up. And then I grab the cross part like that, and I always stitch bottom to top. So I've got my stitch length on 2.5. So we're going to stitch and back stitch, and then we're just going to sew up to the crisscross. So you want to make sure it's all the way on the halfway point. And you can either back stitch or you can pull it off and tie a knot. Professionals tie a knot. I am tired, so I am back stitching. I had the worst sleep last night, but that will not stop me from making this jacket because I want it. It's starting to get really cold here. So this morning it was actually freezing outside when I took Jessie to school. So this is going to be a nice warm quick coat to throw over the top. Okay, so we've only got 4 more bits to go. Both of these fabrics I got from the clearance section in Spotlight. So I don't know if you'll still be able to get them or not. They just happen to match together really well. You probably can't tell from the video, but this fabric has black, brown, and silver in it, and so does the outside main fabric. So it was just, and they were pretty much sitting like on the same shelf right near each other. So I think they look fabulous. Alright, so a quicker way to do this, if you don't want to draw your line, we can just grab here and here, put them together in your hand, and then grab the X And you can do it that way. So you don't have to draw the line, but you do have to be able to like visualize a straight line between point A and point B. So if you're not a good visual kind of a person like that, my suggestion would be to draw the lines on. But that's now got the dart. So I'm just going to do the same to the outside fabric now. Now this does have a front and a back. This is the back and this is the front. Brown's not usually something that I would pick, but I really like the silver, and because it's got black in it as well, it will now have, I will have one jacket that pretty much goes with every outfit, because it'll go with brown boots and jeans, or it'll go with black boots and jeans. So in the winter, when I wear a lot of jeans, if you can't half tell, this will be wonderful to just chuck over the top and be warm. Now, where did I just put that mark? The downside of this fabric is it's really hard to see stuff. There. So another option you can do is actually put a pin in so that you can see. So then I can grab here and here, bring them together like so. Oops. Make sure you've got enough tail so it doesn't retract into your machine. That doesn't need to happen for domestic machines, and I probably should have made this on my domestic, but I still haven't gotten around to rearranging that desk. And then I'm going to put my finger and take the pin out, and then just sew straight towards that point. And there's another dart. You know, is that the right way or is that the right way? I don't actually remember anymore. I suppose it doesn't really matter, to be honest. No, I think that's the back, not this. So I've just sewn that on the wrong way. Whoops. Alright, so instead of unpicking, I refuse to use a quick unpick. I hate them. Hate's a very strong word. I hate them. Every time I've ever tried to use one, it wrecks projects. So instead, I use my snips, and I just snip every third or fourth stitch, and then it should just pull apart. Although you have to do all the stitches at the back stitching. I should have paid more attention to this fabric when it was like a solid piece. Because if you do it backwards, it probably doesn't super matter, except for the fact that because this is like a jacquard fabric, it is likely to have a bit of a meltdown. Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's the front and that's the back. So I'm just going to stitch that in the opposite direction, which I'm going to have to mark with a pin again. I should not be sewing today. I think I'm much too tired for it. So that's the front with lots of silver, and that's the back. And the reason I can tell that this is the back is because the loops in the silver are bigger, which makes me think that they're more likely to come undone. So this is the back. So we'll do that again, but we'll just transfer the marks onto the back instead of the front. And this line can be as chunky as you want. And then again, I'm going to grab this. To get to that mark, you can just pull it down like that and grab some fabric with the pin. Okay, that's better. Match up the lines. Just head straight for your finger and then move it out of the way at the last second so that you don't like get your finger. Now this fabric is going to fray very quickly. but that's okay. Alright, so this is the back. We're going to do one more. Put that there, line that up, pull that down, grab a pin. There we go. So there, pinch together. So this is going to be a very silvery coat, which I don't mind. I like silver. I don't really wear gold, except for my wedding ring, because it's a family heirloom, so I wear that. Well, actually, technically my engagement ring. But all my jewelry is silver. I think I've got one gold belt. Anyway, let's go onto the hood. So, again, we want to go right sides together, which it already is. So the super silvery side is the right side up, and that is the back. So I'm going to stitch down the curve of the back of the hood. So I'm just using the seam allowance in all sewing patterns is 5/8 of an inch. So I go just past the 1/2 inch mark on my little plate here. Now, if it's slippery, you may want to pin this. So I'm probably going to want to pin the lining piece. I could also, if I wanted to, line this with like a fun black fur to keep my head super warm, but I don't have any. Otherwise, I would definitely be doing that. So then we're going to take this one. I'm going to put the pattern pieces down there. We want to make sure that the right sides are together, which they are currently not. Put them together like so. Now again, if you need to add some pins, as I get more complicated sewing bits, I'm going to add pins, but I'm going to attempt to do this without it. So I'm just going to do a couple and then trim off the first part of the hood. I'm also going to be overlocking all of these. So the next two clothing projects are going to be this and then a black shirt, because I've got black in the overlocker and I hate having to change it all the time. I do just tie them through and pull, but it still doesn't necessarily always work out in my favor. So I like to do all the projects in the dark and then switch it to the next color, which will be blue, so I can do my bell sleeve dress. Okay, that needs a little bit less pressure, but that is now stitched. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to overlock those two curves so that they don't come undone. So now what we're going to do is we're going to put the lining right sides out. Flip it out like this, and then we're just going to join them together. So I'm going to take the center seam and I'm going to pin that together. This is where I'm going to start using pins because I want this to line up. It will be like front and center at your head, so it's nice to have like a nice joined seam there. And then if you want to, you can come to the edge. Hold on, I've clipped that to the wrong edge. Hold that thought. Okay, it's not my day. All right, top, front, center is there. The video today was probably ill-advised, but whatever. I'm still doing it because I want this jacket. You guys can just see all the mistakes I make when I'm tired. Okay, so this one. So this curved part at the bottom is literally the bottom. So I'm just going to do this and then line these two seams up, and I'm going to put 2 pins in, one on each side of the seam to hold that in place. like that. And then I'm going to come to the bottom edge and I'm going to line that bit up. Because if you cut it all correctly, it should fit. But much like I do bags, you join the center, like well, in bags it's usually center bottom, and then you go up to the sides and do the top edge. So that's what I'm doing here with the clothes. Same principle, thinner fabric. I hate working with lining, I'm not gonna lie. It's slippery and frustrating, but the results will be worth it. This coat will be epic. So I'm using lots of pins because I am. So I've pinned one side, then I'm going to go and do the same thing on the other side. You just need a lot of pins for floaty fabric, and lining is literally that. A super floaty fabric. And again, I could have lined this with Sherpa or fleece or fur. I would probably pick black, unless you had like the perfect matching tan color. I don't think grey would work to try and match the silver. I think that would look a bit weird. But I've only got white fur or rainbow fur, neither of which really go. If this was an all black coat, I would consider doing rainbow fur, just for something ridiculous. Feels like something I would do. You'll also notice I'm not pushing the pins all the way in. I want them to sit out a little bit from the edge so that the balls don't get caught while I'm trying to stitch it. Okay. Stitch here, back stitch. And I may or may not take the pins out as I go. Sometimes I do it like halfway and then stop. Oh, hold on a second. Sorry about that. That was my husband calling. He is currently outfield. So I thought maybe he was home. He is not. So I have finished stitching along there, and then I have also overlocked it. I will be overlocking pretty much every seam because this fabric will fray very, very easily. So I have stitched and overlocked it, and now I've got like this big puffy thing here. So I am now going to understitch. So what that means is I want to stitch on the lining side and on the seam allowance. So I'm going to open it up, and I'm just going to stitch probably, you can either do an 1/8 or 1/4 of an inch. I'm going to do 1/4 because it's the foot width and it makes my life a bit easier. So I'm just stitching, and what this will do is this will hold the seam down without distorting the outside. So you could stitch and top stitch and have stitching on the outside, but this will look more seamless from the outside of the hood. So I'm just going slowly. I'm not pulling the fabric, but I'm holding it firm so that it doesn't get lumps and stuff in it. Like that, and then we're going to back stitch. Pull it out, trim it off. So now when we turn this in the right way, this is what we get. Just kind of push the hood into itself. So from the outside we don't have a stitch, but that inside stitch is going to hold that back nicely. And that's your hood done. So we can pop that aside. You can also top stitch it if you prefer. I don't think I'd like the look of the top stitch on this particular fabric, but if you're making it out of something different, this top stitch could actually look quite cool. You could do 2 lines and make it fancy. Alright, I've done that bit, so pop that down. I'm going to pop the hood aside because now we need our back piece. There are so many pieces here. This looks like our back piece. So this has got a dart on it as well. So we're doing the dart thing again. Lucky us. And then we're going to join these to the back. And then we install the hood. There's actually not that many pieces to this pattern. There's just a lot of darts which take a lot of time. So I might even fast forward them in this video. Who knows? Fold it down. Put the pin in. There and there. Put it together. Stitch, back stitch. Roll it till it's on the edge. And the back dart is a lot skinnier. And then that's what we get. So that's one. Bring it down, grab a pin. And again, so this fabric is super frustrating to work with. It's why I love unlined coats. I know they're not as pretty, but they're so much easier to do. This probably would have been better to do on my domestic. So I'm using a size 14 needle because it's the smallest I have for this machine. Oh, I'm going to do this all day. Right, that's the back. Fold it down, grab a pin. Okay, line together. Stitch, back stitch, pinch, fold, and up we come. All right, front, back, there, pin. Last one. Another thing I could have done is individually overlock the edge of all of the pieces before I started, which probably would have been smarter for video purposes. And then I can just stitch as normal. And that would prevent fraying, and the process would potentially go quicker because I'm not back and forthing to and from the overlocker. But that's your choice. Okay. So that's that done. So now what we want to do is... Wait, what was that bit then? Oh, I think these are meant to be joined. That's supposed to be a solid back piece, and I think I ran out of fabric, so I did a double piece instead. That's easy enough to just join. I am going to have to overlock this seam though, again, because it will fray, so give me a sec. So now I've got back, I've got a seam, but that's okay. And so then we're going to take one of our fronts, and the armhole bit, which is this bit here, joins to the armhole bit here. And we're going to join the side. Like this. And then we're going to join the top shoulder part as well. We're essentially making a vest right now. So in conclusion to this video, by the way, don't cut your stuff when you're super tired. Alright, and then we're going to do the same here. So I'm going to start with the top shoulder, and then I'll do the side seam so that I can work my way around. And if you can actually just bring this around and chain stitch it in. Doesn't always work. Sometimes things are too tight to do that, but this one's going to work fine. Like that, and then you can just trim the jumps. And so now we have a glorious vest looking thing. I'm actually also going to stitch that back seam down flat. Since I've made one, I want it to sit nicely, so I'm going to stitch it flat. It won't matter if I've got some stitches there. I don't know, if I make a mistake, I can fix it. Obviously, this is meant to be a solid piece, and because it's not, I'm going to fix that problem. I've got to stop doing that. It's like all black thread hates me on camera. I do not have half as much drama when I'm not recording with black thread. So I don't know what's going on. Right, so see how that's now going to sit flatter at the back? You can actually barely see that from there. So that is kind of part of the top part done. Now I need to do the same to the lining. So open that out. Again, what was going on with that seam? Looks a bit skewy, but that'll be right. So I'm going to take an arm, a front, and join it along the bottom here. Hold it. Now you can pin this. Obviously I'm not. And that's okay. And then I'm going to join it at the top. And I can just chain stitch this in. You'll want to start slower with your lining fabrics because they're slipperier. So that's 2, and then we're just going to grab the other piece. It should line up on here, and we can just do the next one. So I can chain stitch all 4 of these if I'm paying attention and start in the right spot. Go to there, and then we'll bring around this last one. So it does look like it's getting a little bit messy here, but I can still very clearly see what I'm doing. Pull that out. And then if I just trim the little jumps in between, we've got our lining. Ta-da! Okay, we are now up to step 10. I don't know how many steps there are. A lot. We're going to be here a while, but that's okay. So the first thing I'm going to do before I do anything further with this hood is I'm going to baste the bottom together so it's closed and one piece rather than 2, because I'm going to find that much easier to work with. So the main points are you want to line up that center point. Everything else should just work for you, as long as you've cut them all the right size. And then again here. Now again, you can pin this. You don't have to just free flow it like I am. Okay, but that is now joined. I'm having the worst luck with thread. It just broke again. This time it was the bobbin. It's like taking turns. So long as you've done your seam within the seam allowance, so within 5/8 of an inch, it'll be fine. But now it's one piece to work with, and it won't be as tricky. Now, funnily enough, because I now have a center back seam, I can see exactly where the hood has to line up. So that's one thing I have going for me. So I'm going to take this part and I'm going to line up the center seams. If you don't have a center seam, just find the center of the back and then do the same thing. And then I'm going to pin it. I'm going to use 2 pins, one each side of the seam to make sure it stays in place, like that. And then we can start pinning outwards. Now this is meant to go not quite to the edge. It stops a little bit short. And that'll be to sew another piece on. So you just want to radiate outwards. We're not doing that thing before where I joined the end and then come back, because it doesn't go all the way to the end. So I actually need to also pin the lining, but I like to pin 2 things and then I can come back and put the 3rd on. So we're going to make a hood sandwich. So that this seam that I'm pinning won't actually be seen because it'll be inside the layers. Right, so now we're going to go the other way. I'm also trying not to tug on anything because I don't want any issues. Pin like so. Okay, so now I've got that. So the hood's on from the outside, but now I want to hide that seam. So I'm going to take the lining and then I'm going to add that to the lining side. So lining to lining. And then add that into all of my pins. Now you could have done it all 3 at once. I don't find that easy, so I don't do it that way. But you can. Nobody's here to stop you. You could also use Wonder Clips, but lining is slippery. So I don't know how well that will actually work for you, which is why I don't do it. I pin slippery things. Alright, so I'm going to finish pinning this and I'll be right back. Alright, all pinned. So, now we're going to stitch it together. I already think I'm doing this differently to the pattern. I'm also not using this sparkly fabric as the facing piece. I'm just having it, the lining, so it's not scratchy to me on the inside of my coat. Which is something I didn't necessarily think about when I purchased the fabric. You can run over pins, as you can see. I know a lot of people don't like to do it. Again, personal preference. I personally am clearly okay with it, but I like to go slowly over pins so that I don't damage anything in the process. You also need to make sure that everything's out of your way. And backstitch. And then I'm going to overlock that because that looks very fraying. You could also add fray stopper glue, but the overlocker works just as well. So I'm going to overlock that, and then we've got kind of the top part of the jacket going on. kind of. That is now overlocked, so I'm going to set that part aside and we're going to move on to the sleeves. So the sleeves have 3 parts. So you've got the cuff, which I have done in the sparkly fabric. You have got your lining and your outer. So let me just move some stuff around here. So we're going to take the fabric and put it right sides together, which I'm not going to lie, the more I look at this, the more I think maybe I did it backwards, but that's okay. I really can't tell. I know that's really bad. I don't remember. It was a while ago when I bought this. Okay, so we're going to stitch the sleeve. Seems simple enough. And back stitch, and then I'm going to grab the second sleeve. Do the same thing. Back stitch, then I'm going to grab the linings and do the same thing. These sleeves are nice and easy, they're just one piece, like for the main part of the sleeve, and then a cuff at the end. Okay, so right sides together. I'm just going to join it in. We're going to chain stitch. I love a good chain stitch, especially because I keep snapping thread. And if they get in your way, you can just chop them off as you go. You don't have to have them joined the whole time. But for me, it's nice to not have to cover up my whole table with stuff. Right sides together. So this one's easier to see right sides versus wrong sides because the right side's shinier. You always want to stop with the needle down when you readjust, especially if you're not using pins, which I'm very clearly not. I possibly should be. So I get about halfway and then I come and line up the bottom to make sure it's going to line up because that's pretty important. Move that over. And back stitch. Pull that out. Ta-da! Okay, where's my instructions? Actually, you know what? We're just going to put them aside and we'll move on to the other bits. I always like to install these closer to the end because it's less bulk attached to the main parts. So, here you go. We can do this bit. This is just the tie-up strap. So this one's nice and easy as well. I'm going to put them right sides together and sew the short end at one end, like this. And then I'm going to put this right sides together, and I want to leave a gap around the center, but not actually on that center line. So I'm going to fold it to here, and then I'm going to start probably 3 inches down, back stitch. Pop that down there, and we're going to stitch down to the end. Down like that, and then across the other short end. And then we're going to do the same, but we're leaving a gap because we need to be able to turn it through. So the bigger the gap, the easier it is to turn through, but the harder it is to close the gap. So you just want to do, I don't know, whatever you feel comfortable with. And again, if you need to, you can definitely pin this. But the fabric is quite stiff, so it's not really slipping, so I'm not having any issues. To the end, needle down, pivot, go off the short end, like that. So then I'm just going to get my zigzag scissors or pinking shears. I know this seems really long, but I tried it with just one piece. It only just went around me, and that's without layers of fabric. So I'm just kind of trimming these corners so that we get a pointier end. Like so. Pardon me. And then we go back to roughly the center. And then we're going to bring it through. So the easiest way I find to do that is I have this flute cleaner, and I'm just going to hold it between my legs and then gently push on that, and it's going to turn it through for me. Now, I know some people like using chopsticks. I would not recommend it for this fabric. You're just going to stab straight through it because it is a jacquard. It is quite a bigger weave compared to other fabrics. But yeah, you just kind of, you grab the outer layer. I can't really show you here because I haven't got a stand. And then you just wiggle it like this, and it pulls it over. See? And this is an easier way of turning it through, I guess. I know it doesn't look like it, but it's because I'm trying to do it on my stomach so you can see. Usually I just hold it in my lap. So one half's nearly through. I can feel it. As you can feel the excess fabric up in here. Whoop, see? And that's what happens when you push too hard. But that's alright, I'm going to top stitch that, so that actually won't be a problem. You have to be gentle. But just because I did that, I'm going to come back and I'm going to do a second line of stitching. So hopefully it won't happen this side as well. It's not the end of the world though, I can fix it. You can fix anything if you try hard enough. Alright, so then again, I'm going to feed this side on. And I'm just going to gently, I'm kind of rocking it back and forth like this, but I'm just making sure I'm only grabbing the outer layer of fabric and not the inside part that's trying to move. Because obviously that's counterintuitive. You're going to rock it back and forth as best you can. And then when I get to here, I'm just going to pull this over so it turns through. And then sometimes this next bit can be a bit tricky because if you're leaning it on the fabric, it's obviously not going to want to move as well. But it's a necessary evil. So see, I'm just rocking it back and forth, and it is turning itself through. Back and forth and back and forth. There you go, and that's the other end. So now you just need to get your stick out, obviously before you close it up. Like so. And I'm going to top stitch all the sides of this, but I'm going to start on the side where the joint is. You can even crank up your stitch length if you want to. And I also want to get out that end so that it's pointy and crisp. That was the whole reason I used the zigzag scissors. So I don't want to leave it kind of sucked in. I want it to be nice and pointy. So this is a stiletto or a sewing awl, depending on where you live is what you call it. So I'm going to do a 1/4 inch seam allowance. You could also do 1/8 of an inch if you wanted to. Now, as I go, I'm just going to roll this out so it sits right on the edge. And I'm always going to stop with the needle down, and then I'll grab the next bit and I'll roll that out as well. Grab it, roll it in your fingers, needle down, and then I can take this off the table because the tie just is at the end, which makes it easy enough. Needle down, pinch it, roll it. The rolling it gets it so that your seam's right on the edge, because there's no point in doing it if it's not. Now, if you've used a fabric that's ironable, I don't know if I'd iron this, but if you've used a fabric that you can iron, by doing this, it saves a lot of ironing because you've already got it all the way to the edge. You could also pre-iron this so that you don't have to maneuver it like I am. That is entirely your choice. So here's the gap. So I'm just making sure that it's lined up and even, and I'm just gonna sew it closed. So that's the gap officially shut, which means I'm about halfway down this side. The other side will be easier because this side's already worked out where the halfway point is. And roll it. I have a sneaking suspicion this is going to be a long video, but that's okay. Roll. So I'm nearly to the end. So this is the end here that I accidentally kind of shot out. But it does give me an opportunity to stick my finger in there and poke the corners out, which is not all bad. And then I can just fold the end over and stitch it closed. So it still works out in my favor. Over, needle down. I'm going to bring all of this around. Then I'm just going to squash it with my hands so that we're on the halfway point. You just want to keep readjusting as you go. Basically, my hand is a big iron, so I'm holding it flat so that this is sitting out on the far side, and then I'm just stitching down. Making sure that I haven't run out of bobbin thread yet, because that's very important too. And then back stitch when we get back to the start. So that's your tie done. We don't need that until the very, very end. And I won't even be tacking this on because if I don't want to use the tie, I can actually use like a waist belt. So that bit's done. One less thing on the table. I like it. Okay. That's the cuffs, so they can go down there. That's the bit we've done. We are up to... So this is the back. So in here, we actually have the opportunity, if we want to add pockets, which I'm going to because I love pockets, personally. They are my jam. But they are only going into the outer. They don't go through to the lining. So to eliminate some pieces, because that's who I am, I'm going to take the lining pieces of the circle. So you should have one that's got a join in the center, which is your center back. And then we should have two side bits. So I want to take this one, And it's kind of got like a longer bit and then a shorter bit. So the shorter curve bit is where we join it to our other piece. The longer bit is for like the wraparound part of the front of the jacket. So I'm going to join these, and then that gets rid of some more pieces for me, because I am all about piece elimination, because there's a lot going on next to me. And then with the outer, we can add pockets. So I've cut the pockets out of lining fabric. I'm just not making them come through to the inside, because I don't want that. Right, so that's one side. And then we're going to come to the other side here. And this one will just go right sides together. So once you figured out the first one, the second one's only got one way to go. Which is kind of cool. And I always like to stitch from the top to the bottom. That's just my thing. Each to their own. You can stitch it the other way if you wanted to. You also want to try and put the bulk of all your fabric on the table so it's not pulling on your fabric. Also important. Especially for lining. I'm already having enough drama with it without adding more to the problems. So I'm not actually pulling on the fabric while I'm doing that. What I'm doing is helping prevent the puckers, because I want it to sit flat. So see here how it's beautiful and straight, and then see this end? This is where I let go of it. Because I'm on an industrial and I mainly make bags with it, obviously my tension is wrong. But if I hold it firmly, I'm not pulling on it, but I'm holding it flat and firm, it seems to work a bit better. Right, so that will need an overlock, which I will do. Actually, I'm going to do it now. So what I'm going to do is on all the sides, I'm actually going to pre-overlock them so that when I add the pockets, it's not going to fray and open at the pocket part. So I'm going to overlock this and the other pieces as well, and then we'll come back and install some pockets. So I've just overlocked the edges where I want to put the pockets. And so now all I need to do is take a pocket piece, and we're going to put it right up against the top, and we're just going to stitch that down. Nothing super fancy. I'm going to go back to joining stitch length. And I'm going to stop half an inch, or 5/8 of an inch, which for me is just eyeballing half, from the bottom, so that the bottom's not completely attached like this. See that? You just got that little bit of extra. And then we're going to join the other one. So we need right sides together like this. And to make my life easier, I'm just going to start from the end. So I'm going to start about half an inch from the end, stitch, back stitch, and up we go. Like so. Oops, did it again. So that's your back piece, and your pockets are attached. So before, actually, what I might do is I am going to understitch these pockets. So again, I'm just going to have the seam allowance, and I'm going to stitch on top of the seam allowance. And this is going to hold the pocket in there, so it's not going to give me grief. Is that stitching, or did I not pull out my... No, I need to pull out the bobbin, because I wrecked it again. Whatever. Ugh, I think I need a drink. I'm having a really big Red Bull. I was nearly quitting them, and then I've had no sleep last night. And I have lots to do today, so I got a big one. I may not drink it all, but at least I have the option to if I need to. Alright. So again, we're understitching the pocket, and this is just going to help it make it stay in and not poke out, because I hate it when pockets do that. Bobbin's out to torture my day. And I also didn't stitch that ½ inch at the bottom, so I left that bit as well. I also need to trim off all the tails, so it is still detached up here. So I'm going to do the same to this one. So again, over the seam, stitch, back stitch. That doesn't sound good. What now? Something wrong with my bobbin today. I don't know why it's doing this to me. Oh, there you go. I got caught in the loop. That's a new one, even for me. Right, next clothing video is on the damn domestic. This machine is now used to and likes thicker bobbin thread. So again, we just want to go to where we stitched and not past, and then back stitch, and then trim those tails off, all of them. And this is now what we have. So we're going to pop that one aside, and then grab one of these bits. Doesn't matter which one. So I've only overlocked the side I need to put the pocket on. It helps my brain a little bit, not gonna lie. So we're gonna lie that right sides together. Again, starting 5/8 of an inch away. Stitching up and back stitch. And then I'm gonna trim off those tails. While I'm here, I'm gonna go back, fold it over, and then top stitch, or understitch this is called. I'm going to understitch it down. And I promise this will help the pocket sit in. I mean, you could fold it all the way under and top stitch it, but I don't always love that. There's a time and a place for those kind of pockets. And that time and a place is not today. Alright, last piece. So what have I done? It's facing the wrong way. I'm like, why is that not working? It does, we're fine. So again, we're starting just off the edge. Oh no, does that mean I stitched that one to the wrong side? And then swivel it around. And top stitch it down. Now normally I would cut that off and go the other way, but that was definitely quicker. Okay, so there's that. Oh no, it's on the right one. I'm just having a moment. It's fine. Right, so now what we want to do is we want to put right sides together. So we're taking our back piece and just one of our front pieces. So I'm going to lay that with the right sides up. See, I did do it wrong. What's going on here? So that's that side. And so then we take this one and put that one on top like so. So I'm going to do this side first, obviously, because the other side is apparently wrong and I have to unpick it all. Shouldn't sew tired, people. But I refuse to give up. I'm like halfway through. It's fine. So I'm joining from the bottom to the top because I need that bottom to join up. And then if you've done your pockets correctly, they will also join up. So what you're going to do is you're going to sew up to the join and then around your pocket. So I'm going to join the pocket up. That. Around. And around. Okay. So I'm going to stitch, I'm going to back stitch. That locks it in. And I want to come up to and join in with those stitches from the pocket. And then we could pivot out and go around said pocket. And then we're going to overlock exactly what I'm stitching. If you don't have an overlocker, you could just do a zigzag stitch right on the edge. It's going to do something similar. And most modern machines now have an overlocking stitch. So if you read your manual, it will tell you which one your overlocking stitch is. It's a different number on every machine, so I obviously can't tell you. So now, what I'm going to do in a second is I'm going to join that and then push the pocket to the front, like so. And so this is now what your pocket looks like. It's just a small, almost invisible opening, but you've got a pocket. Ha ha! That looks lovely. So now I have to deal with the other side that I very clearly stuffed up. Let's see what I did wrong. So I've sewn it to the back instead of the front, so I have to unpick the understitching and the actual stitching. So give me a solid minute. All fixed. Pocket's now on the right side of everything, which is awesome. So now we just grab the other pocket piece and line it all up. Do the same thing again. I realize why I stuffed up. One of the linings of both the pockets is inside out. But the pattern is very similar and it's in a pocket, so I'm going to leave it. And I know that sounds really dodgy, but I'm cool with it. Nobody's looking in my pocket. And the outside and the inside do look very, very similar. So it can just stay that way. I could unpick all the pocket pieces and fix them. And if it bothered me, if it was a really big difference between lining and outer, I would go and fix it. But it's in a pocket that nobody's going to look in. People just get excited there is pockets. Nobody's like looking in them. So I'm just leaving it. Because it's just for me. If I was selling the coat, obviously I would fix it. But it's for myself. So I'm just doing it. Well, apparently I'm too tired to worry about the right and the wrong side of all this fabric. That's probably my main problem. I should have picked something that is easier contrasting for the day, but it is what it is, and it's done now. Well, it's nearly done. I'm not stopping this far into the coat. We're nearly there. And I really want this coat. It's cold outside, and this is going to look fabulous. And why do we sew if not to have fabulous things? Doesn't matter what you sew. If you're watching this and you're like, I'm never doing clothes, this looks like hell, that's totally fine. I've made this one probably look a little bit trickier than it needs to. Pick a fabric with easy contrasting sides, and don't sew when you're tired. We'll solve all your problems. But even if you just sew like household furnishings, you do it so that you have nice things in your house. It doesn't matter if you're making bags or clothes or whatever. Everybody likes to have nice things. I know I do. I'm so excited for this coat. You have no idea. And I'm really excited for the bell sleeve dress, but that's not even cut out. And I'm not even going to attempt to cut it out today. It's not a thing. Besides, I still have a green jacket here I need to do. And a black shirt. I have a lot of sewing to do. Alright, so again, we check to make sure we've done it correctly, which this time I have. See, like that, the pocket doesn't look that different. So I'm fine with it. So now what I want to do is I'm going to take the pocket and join it at the seam, and I want to pin the pocket to the front part. Otherwise, your pocket will be behind you, and that's weird. So I'm going to just tack it to here, like so. And so I'm going to be able to just sew straight across there. That's going to shut the pocket and hold everything in place so it's lovely. So I'm going to do that to both pockets. Otherwise, this is sitting a little bit wider than it needs to. So basically, we just want to join that up there and then attach it to the raw edge side so that your pocket, you want to make sure these seams are like right on top of each other. Like so, and that way you can't see the pocket. It's not gaping at all. And I'm just going to tack that down or base it down. See, and then the pocket will sit beautifully within the seam, but towards the front of the jacket. So your hands go in like this and not back like that. Alright, so I'm just going to tack it within the seam allowance. And the second pin is basically there to see where to stop. Pull your pins out, trim off those tails. Yeah, this one's moved, of course it has. So again, in the seam allowance, just make sure those two are lining up lovely, like that. Back stitch to lock it in. Oh, see, I just did the bobbin thing again. This is good thread too. I'm not sure why it's doing it. It's just out to get me today. Whatever. It will not be, oh, that's why. We nearly had a bobbin. There's not enough to do a single seam there. Unless it's like the world's smallest seam. Right. I'm going to have to pause it again. We're going to wind another bobbin. I'm also going to oil my space under here. And then we're up to construction. Right. So we are now going to take our bottom pieces, so the outer and the lining, and we're going to stitch them together at the straight edges and around the bottom and then up the other side. So I'm going to pin this so that it stays put, because I don't like it when my things move. So I'm going to pin top, bottom, and then add a few in between. Now you can use as many or as few pins as you feel comfortable. So that's a short straight edge, so I don't need a lot of pins there. But this big curve, we're going to need quite a lot, because it's huge, which is fine. So I'm just going to maneuver around. When I run out of pins, I'm just going to stop and sew to there, and then pull the pins out and do the next bit. So you don't need to have 500 pins. You can just do it in sections. It will all still work out fine. You also want to make sure that the seams are all matching up everywhere. So everywhere we go, the seams want to match, because that'll just, A, that's where they're supposed to be, and B, it just looks a little bit more professional if you've got everything matching. Okay. There. Here. So that's like the first section done. So you could even just stop pinning there. I'm not going to get much further. I've got like 4 extra pins, but I am going to use them all so that I can get further. So after we've done this, we're actually going to understitch it as well so that it sits nicely, because that's what the pattern says to do. I'm also thinking I'm going to do my sleeves a little bit differently. I've just woken up properly, I guess, and I'm having like a clarity moment. So the way that they do the armholes is you just stitch them in, and then you'll have this, like, the overlocker seam in the lining. And I'm just trying to think if I can do it a different way so I don't have that, because I don't want that. Alright, so I'm going to go back to that edge. We're going to start at this edge, and we're going to go around. So you want to stitch, and you want to back stitch. So you can pull the pins out as you go if you want to, or you can just come and like clean house at the end of this section. It's entirely up to you. So I'm just trying to make sure that the bulk of my, well, that's not really a skirt, but the bottom half of my jacket, I don't want it pulling on my stitches. And then if I pull my pins out as I go, this is a nice big curve, so it's actually quite easy to stitch a little bit faster. You don't have to go fast. There's no official speed for anything. You just do whatever makes you comfortable. Alright, and I'm going to stop one pin. So I'm going to stop here before I get to that last pin and leave it, because then that's going to hold it for the next section. And so then we're going to keep pinning around. And it actually held pretty well, so I could probably spread the pins out just that little bit further. I'm surprised, actually, that the lining isn't misbehaving as much as I thought it would, which is good. I'm not complaining. Also, if you wanted to, you wouldn't have to line the circle skirt bottom half if you didn't want to. I wanted to because I had the fabric and, you know, I'm teaching you cool stuff. But you could just as easily only line the top half. I've actually made this jacket in just one layer where I didn't do any of it. I've made it twice. I could always go back and add a lining if I wanted to, but I just wanted like a really quick jacket. So I just overlocked all the seams, and it took me not very long at all. It took me longer to cut it than sew it, from if memory serves. So I have I have this jacket twice, but it's just unlined. But I figured that's not really teaching you anything. So we're doing a lined one, even though I hate working with lining. It is worth it. It does look amazing. I just hate lining. It's so floaty and flimsy, and but it looks fabulous, so we suffer through. Alright. Pinning around. I know this takes ages, guys, but worth it because it won't slip, which is obviously something that we want. We don't want slippage everywhere. Alright, and then I'm only going to get 4 pins past that next section, but that's okay. That means we're nearly there. And 4 pins is still quite a big section. Cool. So now we just go back to the other lot of pins, which I actually made it a long way around that. Alright, so we're going to pop it under. We're just going to go over the last few stitches, mainly so we don't leave a gap. And around we go. And again, you want to try and have as much of the weight on the table. Pull the pins out. I love big curves. There's that seam. We get all the way to... I'm actually going to see if I can go past it a little bit. I'm just going to go to there. I didn't go much past the pins, but I did a little bit. So now we've just got the last section. I mean, I could have gone and got more pins, but not everybody has 500 pins. Which is totally normal, by the way. You don't need 500 pins. It's excessive. I'm just going to lay this down like that. You can just pin randomly to hold it in place. Where did I stop there? I've got a few different types of pins in here. My favorite pins to use are quilting pins because they're longer and easier to use. The downside to them though is they are thicker, so they will leave more of a hole in your finer fabrics. And then I just have some normal, I don't know, cheap sewing pins. I think these are a Semco brand, which is like Spotlight's home brand. I'm going to go up this side. Okay, so then I want to go back where I left off, which is not that far anymore. Back stitch through the last few stitches so that you won't have a gap. That's very important. You don't want to have a gap. And it won't hurt to stitch over the last few stitches. It's not going to cause any damage anywhere. And we're going to get to the corner. We're going to pivot. I'm going to pull off these. This is definitely going to need an overlock. Look at it go. Or a serge, if you call them serges and not overlockers. To the end, back stitch, done. Okay, so I'm going to overlock all of that, and then we have to go and understitch it. And then we're just going to attach it to the top half, which is exciting. All right, so I'll be back in a minute as soon as I have, well, for you it's like a second. Overlocked all the way around. That was actually pretty quick and simple, which is awesome. So now I'm just going to kind of open it up, make sure the seam allowance is to that side, and we're now going to top stitch as much as we can. Well, not top stitch, under stitch. Sorry, I used the wrong word. Here I was thinking I'd woken up. So you're going to get as close into that corner as you can get. Needle down, and then I imagine it's just going to pull that out and go to the next section, because I can't get all the way into that corner because it is a tight curve. But we got most of the way, which is fine. So then I'm just going to start on the curve part as close as I can, but it's okay if you can't get all the way into the corner, which I cannot. So I'm going to start right there. No, I'm not. Just unthreaded my needle. Of course I did. I don't know if I'm going to do any more sewing today. not really working out the way I anticipated. What else I can't see? I've got a black background, black thread, and no light coming this way. The top stitching is important. It will help it to sit and not kind of sag, which is something that we want. Come on. All right, excellent. Back stitch. And then around we go. We're just going to lift it up and twist it. So we're doing the curve now. So this bit's going to be like a long one. But it is pretty easy to understitch. Because the lining is thin, I can actually feel to make sure that the seam allowance is under it. So I can move, I wouldn't say quickly, but not super slowly either. Alright, first seam. So that's the first third done. I'm onto the back section now. So I'm just gonna keep going. Right, so this is starting to pull because it's falling off the table. So I'm gonna just put it to the side like that so it stops that nonsense. If you haven't recently checked your bobbin, now would be a good time to check it too, because you'd hate to do all this stitching and it's not doing anything. See how it keeps trying to slide off the table? That is not what you want. I know you can't really see, but we're still just understitching the whole thing. I'm using the edge of my foot along the seam, so we're doing about a 1/4 inch away. All right, I'm getting close to this corner now. So you get as close in there as you can without wrecking anything, which for me is about there, and then we're going to back stitch and pull it out. Like that. And then I'm going to pull it completely out, readjust so that I can do this edge. But I'm actually just going to go from top to bottom and have all the fabric on the opposite side, which is fine. Usually I'm not one to put bulk in here, but it's much of a muchness. And it's going to be easier to stitch top to bottom than it is to stitch bottom to top, because I can head towards the tricky part as opposed to away from it, which makes it less tricky. Alright, that is pretty close to that corner, so I'm going to stop there. Thread it out from under it, trim that off. The whole thing is now understitched. Yay! So now I'm just going to turn it so it's right way out. It looks ridiculously huge, but you just need to trust the process. All right. I'm going to grab this top. And what we actually need to do is take the top and we're going to seal up the side. Because we've sealed the side on this, we need to seal down this edge on the jacket as well. Stitch, back stitch, off we go. And make sure it all lines up nicely. So again, if you need to use some pins, I'm feeling pretty confident about that. So then we're going to do the other side as well. Like that. Back stitch. Voila. Cool. Okay. So I am going to take the outer because I want my hand stitching to be on the inside. So we're going to take the bottom outer section, which is here, and that's my center back because I just happen to have a seam. So what we want to do is we want to find the center back of the skirt, which you just fold this bit in half and go to there, and then I'm going to make a little clip to make it easy to come back to when it falls out of my lap like that. So there's the center. So I'm going to take the center of this. I'm going to put a pin so we can see it nice and easy. Right. Pin. Center. Beautiful. Center seam. Join it up. Right there. And so now we need to move outwards from the center, like we always do. Now I'm going to make sure that the darts, like the excess fabric from the darts, is going to face towards the center on both sides. So they're both going to point inwards towards the center. Well, not both, all, I guess. I want everything to point towards the middle because that's easy to deal with. Okay, and then this gets to there. And then that other bit is meant to be folded in. So what's happening is this will fold in on itself like that, so that we have a facing inside of the jacket. But before we do that, we're going to go and pin the other side. We're going to do that facing bit at the end. So again, I'm making everything face towards the center. That includes all the seams. That way they're all kind of just going the same way. Definitely makes this a little bit easier. Like this. So I'm going to show you what this looks like in a second. Let me just finish pinning. So, here's our hood, and now here is the waist that we've just pinned, and this excess is going to fold in on itself. So here's a sleeve. I can almost put it on for you as long as I don't stab myself. So this bit here, I need to keep pinning, but then this excess little bit will fold in so that we have a facing of this. And that's how it's built. And I like that. Okay, so that I've got facing the wrong way. It's going to go in towards the center. And so then we're just going to keep pinning. Then I'm going to do the same to the lining. And I'm going to leave a gap on one side because I'm going to stitch it shut anyway. Alright. So you should now have pinned from there all the way across to the other side, and then you'll just have this extra little bit of the skirt part of your jacket. I know it's not actually a skirt, but I don't know what else to call it, so I'm calling it the skirt part. Okay, so I'm going to start here. I'm going to lift up, pop it under. We're going to stitch, we're going to back stitch. Now again, if you want to, you can pull your pins out as you go, or you cannot. That is your choice. We're going along. This is the pocket bit here. So this is also quite frayed along this edge, so I will be overlocking this. I'm at the other pocket now. So there should be no form of like tucks or rolls or anything like that. Okay, pull out all of the pins. And then we're going to overlock this because it's definitely fraying. One, two. Alright, so I'm going to overlock that seam just so it stops doing this. See how there's like a lot of fraying going on? We don't want that to ever get to a point where it's going to wreck the jacket and we'd have to unpick it. So overlocking will be the quickest solution to that. That's overlocked. What we actually need to do is turn the whole thing kind of inside out so that we can get this seam and join it up and do the same thing. So I'm going to find the center back of the skirt like so. I just fold the two seams and that's the center back. Now we're going to know where the center back is because I've got a seam down the center back, which is this one. So I'm going to join this here. Now we need to make sure we remember to leave a gap to turn everything through. So I'm actually going to leave it at this side because I still need to stitch that down anyway. So I gotta leave it somewhere. May as well be there. Now I'm pretty sure the pattern leaves the gap on the outside and then understitch it, like hand stitches it shut. If I need to have some hand stitching, I would prefer to have it on the inside where it's not going to be seen when worn. That's just my personal choice and that's what I plan on doing. Now this is obviously, I've gone a little bit off script according to the pattern because I've stopped pulling it out. It's fine. Don't stress. I'm not. Now, the bigger the gap you leave, the easier it is to turn, but also the more you have to hand stitch. So I'm going to stop about there. That should be a big enough gap. And then we're going to go the other way. And again, I'm making sure all of the darts and the seams are pointing towards the center. I like them that way, I guess. Use as many pins as is necessary. You'll notice I've started using a lot more pins than before. Before were small, short lines, whereas now it's a little bit more complicated than that. All right, so this time I'm going to go all the way up to that seam, like that. Okay, so now I'm going to start where my pins start because I've already worked out the gap I want to leave. Under we go, stitch forward and back. And again, we want to make sure that the fabric isn't pulling on our stitching. I think I'm just gonna do sections and pull the pins out as I go. Now, even though this is inside the jacket, I am still gonna overlock this so that it stays where I want it. And I'm making sure that all the darts go the right way. Okay, done. Back stitch, pull her out. So again, I'm going to overlock that section. So now I'm just going to put my hand into the hole and start pulling it out. And this turns much easier than a bag because I don't really have a lot that I'm fighting. So it should mainly be out now. All that's left really to do is our sleeves and that final little bit. So it should all be sitting pretty nice. I'm just pulling out all of the edges. Now if you did do the facing of the top half, you would obviously line it up with that. Okay, so I'm just making sure that I work out all the corners so that it looks lovely. Like that. And then I'm going to fold this so it's right on the edge. Now again, you might even want to put some pins in so it stays put. So I'm just rolling it in my fingers till it's right on that edge. And then we just need to do the sleeves. So I'm just holding this in place because I'm going to top stitch. Right, and so then this bit, I'm just going to tuck in the edge that we didn't stitch, like so. And then I'm going to fold this over so it lines up perfectly here. So see where it joins? This is the waist join. So you want to fold it over so it's going to sit perfectly there. Like that. And you want to tuck in all the raw edges like that. And I'm going to actually tack that along that waistline as well. And I'm going to hand stitch that down. So just put that where I need it, like so. And then you just, oh, hold on. And then this just needs to sit straight. So like that. And then I'm going to pin it everywhere I need to pin it. And so then you can either tack this down or top stitch. I plan on top stitching. So I'm just going to hold it with pins so it sits where I need. Now, if you've done the facing will literally match up here and all of this will look like this. But I didn't want it scratchy on the inside of my jacket, at the top especially if I'm just wearing a t-shirt. That would annoy me because I did pick a jacquard. So I didn't put that facing in. I did cut it and then I decided not to use it. Because you can do that. It's your coat. You do what you want. Right? So now, if I put this on, right, put it half on for you. See how this goes now straight down in front? And that's the waist there. So it kind of looks like a dress. This actually would have made a glorious dress. All right, so I'm going to do the same to the other side. So I'm going to start, by pinning this section. And then we're just going to put the sleeves in. Right, you get the point there. So then I'm going to lay this down. I'm going to make sure this corner's out and crisp because that's the bit we're folding over. So even though you won't really see this corner, it's still nice to pull it all the way out so it looks good. Like that. And then we're going to lay this down. I'm going to tuck in all of those raw edges, including the part I didn't stitch shut. because you can just pin that shut. I also, once I did it, realized I probably could have turned it through an armhole, but too late now. Right, and I only left a small gap in this part. So there's only like 2 inches, and I'm going to hand stitch that shut when I put the facing on anyway. So it's actually not a big deal that it even exists, because it will be hidden once I fold over this facing in a second. But I'm just pinning everything where I need it to be. So it's going to sit nicely. I'm all about the nicely. And then again, we're just going to fold that over like so that it sits gloriously together. And then I can take some of these pins out because I'm pinning through all the layers. Now I will be hand stitching this shut, which I don't love doing, but it is a necessity. You want to make sure that that's right on that edge, and then fold that over so that the line is just continuing down like that. You want a nice even line, and I've run out of pins, but that's okay. I can borrow them from elsewhere. So this needs to come down and join up down here. Like that. And like that. Ouch. And so then I can steal some of these pins and do this. Cool. So from the outside, I actually probably will now top stitch literally the whole way around. So I'm going to start at one bottom here, and I'm going to stitch and back stitch, and I'll come and hand tack the actual bottom. But because I didn't actually top stitch the hood, I can now just go up and over the entire thing. It's going to sit lovely. And that way it's one continuous thing. So I could have top stitched the hood instead of under stitching it, but now because I want the lines to kind of flow and follow, I might take all these pins out, except the bottom ones. We still need them in there because I'm going to hand tack that down. And so now we're just moving up around the hood. I'm going to top stitch everything. It's going to look awesome. Again, check your bobbin as you're going if you haven't changed it in a while. I'd hate for you to do all this beautiful top stitching and you're stitching nothing. So now I'm coming down and around. I'm about to come off the hood now. And I'm now onto the body part. Whoa, snap the needle. Don't know what. Oh, I ran over the ball head because the pin was underneath. Bugger. Alright, let me change the needle. Change the needle. Off we go. Hopefully this won't snap another one. Trim off the tails from there. And then I'm just going to keep going down, because I've pinned it all in place already. Okay, and then back stitch. I love it. Right. I am going to insert the arms and then like the sleeves, and then I'll do the last hand tacking at the end. I won't show you all of it. I'll just do like one or two. Okay, so first off, we want to take our cuffs and I'm going to stitch them together. Feels like a good plan. So that way is the right way is together. Love it. Okay. So now what I want to do is I'm going to turn the lining ones right ways out. Oh, and I also need to overlock these and that edge. We need to do lots of overlock. Let's try that again. So I'm going to turn these right sides out. And with these, I'm going to fold them in half. So this is technically the cuff. So you want to make sure that this seam here doesn't get twisted first up. Like this, and then up and around like that. So what this cuff is going to do is have no raw edges at the very, very end. I might even grab some Wonder Clips for this. So you just kind of want to pin it together. I'll use actual pins in a minute, but this is like a nice quick thing. So you want to have right sides out, wrong sides together, and this is what the end of the cuff will actually look like. Like that. And we want to do the second one. Wherever I've put it. I know I just had it. Ah, fell down. Cool. So, take this seam, make sure it's folded in the same direction and fold it over, and then just pull that around roughly until you start pinning it or clipping it. I'm clipping because it's quicker, and it's temporary because I still have to pin this to the jacket in a second anyway. So I'm going to pin or clip that cuff like that. I'm going to move that off this table. Excellent. So I've got the two cuffs done, put to the side. So now I'm going to take my sleeve and I'm going to line up. I'm going to put my arm in it, and this is the easiest way to do it. So I'm going to put my arm in it and grab it with my hand, and then I'm going to slide it into the sleeve like this. So the idea is that this seam, oh wait, or do I want this the other way? Hold on. No, I want right sides out of this. This one right sides out. And this one right sides in. And slide it in. Right, let's try that again. So, seams are touching either way. And so then I'm going to pin that. And I'm going to bring this up, and I actually want to baste this together. So the sleeve's just going to be one piece. I've decided we're doing it the way the pattern says because it's quicker. And I'm all about quicker today. Right, so we want to line all of the lining up so that when you look in, it looks the good, like the nice way. Oh, I've got fluff all over my face. It's itchy. Right, so that's what we're aiming for. And we want to put our arm down the sleeve and we want to feel to make sure that it's not twisted. And we're going to do the same at the top. So we're essentially just making one sleeve piece that's lined. So I'm going to baste this bottom I'm going to repeat this with the other sleeve as well, so just give me a second. So I'm just stitching around, and within the seam allowance so that you're not going to see these stitches anyway. I just wanted to hold as one piece because it's easy to work with as a single piece rather than multiples. And if I do it to both ends, then it's going to be easier when I insert it into the rest of it, the actual jacket. So again, I'm just going around the edge. Now these should all just fit nicely, so you shouldn't need a lot of pins. I just did it as the main entrance. But we're putting wrong sides together so that when you look into the sleeve, it looks lovely. And the outside also looks lovely. And that's pretty much all I'm doing. And I'm stitching both bits now so that it doesn't twist as I'm working on the bottom. So I just want to put it in and stitch it together. Preferably don't stab yourself with the pins you put in. And then back stitch when you get back to the start. So that is now a single sleeve. And then when you look into it, it's still nice. Not that anyone ever looks in sleeves, but it's the principle. Can't say I've ever looked into a sleeve. So again, we're going to do the same to this one. So I'm going to turn this one inside out and this one right way out. I mean, you can do it either way, but it helps my brain to do it this way. And considering my brain is struggling today, I'm just going to do it the way my brain can do it. And have another drink. I thought I'd be awake by now. It's like 10:30 in the morning. I got no sleep last night. So, again, I'm going to stick my arm in the sleeve so that nothing gets twisted. And then I'm just going to run my hand along. So where the seam was, I'm just running my hand in the same manner. And I'm going to clip it or pin it there. You can pin or clip. And I'm going to do the same to this so it can't twist. Because if it does like a full rotational twist, it's going to be a nightmare. Nobody wants to play that game, so I'm just not going to. So because these are the same size, I don't have to pin it. I can just work my way around. Just make sure you keep twisting this bit. And then again, I'm just going to base this. So I'm making sure I'm doing it at like 1/4 of an inch. Nothing more than that because we don't want to see these stitches. It's just to hold it while we stitch it together. So because they're the same size, it's not like installing the arm because they're the same. So that was quite easy to do. Okay, now that everything's joined, I'm going to go back and face it the wrong way. Because now my brain can cope. I know this was the whole intention the whole time, but whatever. It's fine. It's fine, it's fine, it's fine. So, when we turn the sleeve out though, you can see that there's no seam. It looks nice. It's a bit fun. So now we're going to take our cuff. And the cuff has to go on the inside like this. And I want to join that seam with the seam on the cuff. So I'm just going to clip it. Or you can pin it. And this should fit perfectly. So I'm just going to push it inside like that. And as you can see, it's very, very much fraying. But that's okay because we're going to overlock this in a second. We're just going to make sure that everything's lined up first. So if I wanted to, I could have also basted the edge of this so it becomes one. And then I'm going to do the same to this one. So again, shove it inside. And if you've got a preference on which half you liked better, or if your pattern is super directional, you want to put the good side on the outside wall. So you want to join the good side to the thing, and the wrong side wants to be here. Okay. So they're now clipped in, so I'm going to stitch them down with the correct seam allowance. And I'm just going to start anywhere because it's a circle. I am going to back stitch though. I do not want this coming undone. It's already fraying a whole heap and getting stuck in my foot. But again, I am going to fix that in a second because we're going to overlock this. As soon as I make sure I put it in the right way. So now when we turn this out, you now have a cuff. See how the cuff, but that will need an overlock or a zigzag or a something. It will definitely need a something. Okay, so I'm just going to do the other one, and then I will go and overlock both of these to get rid of all of that shedding. That is the only downside to jacquard. It does shed a lot, which is less than fun to play with. But it does look fabulous at the end, so I do suffer through it sometimes. When I'm super inspired by a fabric, I will do it. So we're going to get all the way back to the start, and then you want to back stitch. Look how much it is molting. So I'm going to go and overlock those, and then we are going to put them, so I could overlock them at the end once I've inserted them, but it is easier to do now, and because of the amount of molting off that, look at that, that's insane. I want to overlock it right now. Look at the difference the overlocking makes. There's no shedding anymore. It is much, much neater and much easier to deal with. Love it. So now I'm going to turn these right sides out like that, and we just need to insert them into the jacket. So again, we might want to baste this together so that it stops fraying and carrying on. And it will also then be just one piece instead of two. So I'm going to join the lining and the outer together. And make sure I get those seams lined up. And then I'm just going to work my way around so that it's one piece. Because it'll be easier to just join two pieces instead of the four we were going to have before I started doing all this basting. And yes, it uses a little bit more thread, but it's going to save you so much frustration when you're trying to join it. So I think it's worth it. Alright, so that side's joined. I'm also going to do the other armhole, wherever it is hiding. Over here. I also need to be careful of all the pins that are still in this because of where I haven't yet hand stitched, because I already stabbed myself once. Lucky me. Alright, so then under we go. And then around slowly. Needle down. Swivel it around. So this is just basting, so it doesn't need to be neat, it doesn't need to be super even, so long as it's within the seam allowance, it's fine. Right, so now we take the sleeve, and we take the jacket, So this is this one. So I'm going to take this bottom seam and join it up with the bottom seam here, so the side seam. I'm going to do it with, I'm going to do it this way, so that when I'm stitching, the sleeve piece is on top, because I find that easier to do. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to line up this seam at the bottom and put 2 pins in it so it doesn't shift. Like that. And then I'm going to go find the halfway mark between the sleeve, which is there. And I'm also going to find the halfway mark, which is there, and I'm going to clip those together. Now, if you're new to sewing, do pins all the way around, but I tend to just do it more organically than that. So I'm going to start at the bottom where the pins are. So we're going to stitch, we're going to back stitch. As we've used the pin, we can pull it out. And now that I've done that bit, what I'm going to do is I'm going to hold the sleeve against the outer part to make sure that it's all even and smooth. And then I'm just going to kind of hold it up and feed it into the needle. So I'm holding it up as a circle as opposed to a flat piece on the table. So I want to use my fingers as the pins basically and just maneuver it around until it's smooth and even, and then stitch around. And then you want to check it from the outside to make sure that it's sitting nicely. And would you look at that? What a lovely looking sleeve. There's no tucks or anything. So that's one in. Now we just need to do the other one and some hand stitching and it is finished. So again, I'm going to join the side seam with the under seam of the arm and put 2 pins, one each side, to hold that seam evenly. And then I flip it so it's inside out. And again, we're going to find halfway. You can even put a pin there if you need to, like that, or you can clip it, but as you can see, it's starting to fray again. So the pin is going to be easy to see than a little clip mark. And the clipping might actually also in turn make it worse, which we don't want at all. So I'm going to pin that there. So I've got the top and bottom pinned. And so again, I'm going to basically use my fingers and I'm going to hold them like this. So like a circle. So I'm pushing outwards and it's going to create the curve, which will push everything out to where it needs to be. And that's how I do sleeves, because I know a lot of people struggle with sleeves. And this has got like no give in it whatsoever. Ow. This is why I don't like pins. They keep stabbing me. So again, we need to get it all into the sleeve. Bring it around. Bring it under the needle. And I'm just going to keep rolling the whole jacket around. I can take out that pin so I don't stab myself with it. Feels like a jolly good idea. So then again, hold it as a 3D object and kind of feed it into the needle. And then backstitch. And then we're going to check that one. And that one looks good too. There's no pinches or tucks anywhere. So now I can just overlock those. And then we're going to hand stitch this bit and we are done. You can have come closer so that you can see what I'm doing. So I've put a knot in the bottom of my thread, and then I'm just going to kind of grab a little bit of fabric, and then I'm just going to do basically a whip stitch, which is when I go a little bit of this fabric and then a little bit of that fabric and just kind of hold it together. I'm going to pull out the pins as I come to them so that they don't stab me. So I'm just stitching through the lining layer and then this top edge here. I find this the easiest stitch to do. It's also quite strong. I've doubled over my thread. I never do it single layer because I just don't trust thread that much. So I'm just going to, and I'm doing pretty close. I'm probably doing 1/8 of an inch of a stitch apart. And I'm just going to go across this whole top section. Now I'm going to do this to all the sections, but I just thought I'd show you one. I'm going to pull out that pin because I'm up to it. I like the pins to stay in as long as possible because they are holding things in place for me. I also don't really have a long enough piece of thread right now, so I don't know if I'll make it all the way to the edge. If you don't, that's okay. You just tie it off, get another bit, tie it back on. So this is also closing up that gap in the lining, but I'm not stitching all the way through. So you won't see these stitches from the outside. And again, if you did a facing, there'd be a facing piece here. So you would barely even notice the difference in fabrics. Oh, I might actually make this. That's pretty exciting. Did not see that coming. So we're just stitching around and around and around. And so then when we get to the end, I'm going to stab it through, and then I'm going to come and put my finger against the edge of it. And I'm going to wrap it 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 times. And then I'm going to use my thumb to hold those wraps there and just pull the needle through slowly. So I want to try and keep all of those twists as close as possible because that's my knot. And then I can just trim it off. And that, even from that distance, it's not terribly noticeable. So it looks quite neat. So I'm just going to repeat that with the rest of them, and then your jacket is done. I hope that was somewhat helpful. I know I'm super tired and made a lot of mistakes, but I did leave them in. So even if you do make mistakes, just persevere and get it done because it will look fabulous. Is that not like the coolest coat ever? Anyway, guys, until next time, bye-bye.